All right, fourth grade. So here we are, ready to do our last lesson in English for the school year. So we already started talking about quotations, and now we are going to finish talking about quotations. So in the previous lesson, we mentioned that quotations are when you're saying exactly what the person said. And depending where you put it in a sentence, you will have the remark that they said it in. So, for example, if they said it in a shouting way, you're going to put an exclamation point, right? If they asked a question, you're going to put a question mark at the end. But today we're going to talk about what happens if they're not asking a question and if they're not exclaiming something. So let's read. Quotation marks show a speaker's exact words. More punctuation marks, as well as capital letters, are needed to write quotations correctly. Always capitalize the first word of a quotation. When a quotation comes last in a sentence, use a comma to separate the quotation from the words that tell who is speaking. Put the end mark inside the last quotation marks. So that's a lot of information. It's kind of confusing. So let's look at some examples. Brittany said. Do you see how we put a little comma here? Because the person who's talking is telling somebody that Brittany said this. So they put a comma here because remember we said commas come with pauses. Brittany said, and we're going to say what Brittany said. We put a comma. We don't put a period because the sentence is not over. This is part of the sentence. It's just we're going to say what it is that Brittany said. So put a comma, start your quotation, and remember it says here that always capitalize the first word in a quotation. So start your quotation and the first letter is capitalized. All birds have feathers. Since there's nothing else going on after the sentence, because we already said Brittany said this, we put a period and quotation mark because this is what Brittany said, okay? Here it says Hideki, I'm sorry, I don't know how to say that. Hideki asked, again we have our comma, start of the quotation marks, capital letter, can all birds fly? So since this was Hideki's question, we put the question mark inside of the quotation marks. You see here? So the quotation marks are literally like, imagine in a cartoon, the little bubble that pops up above their head and they hear the person talking. That's basically what quotation marks are. Imagine these are little bubbles and they can imagine that this is what that person said. They're picturing that person saying exactly whatever is in these little bubbles. Okay, so imagine the quotation marks are little bubbles. Next one says, Lauren said, again, there's our comma, start of our quotation marks. Look at the tiny hummingbird. Put a period, end of quotation marks, because this is what Lauren said. Okay? Next set of rules. When a quotation that is a statement or a command comes first in a sentence, put a comma inside the last quotation marks. If the quotation is a question or an exclamation, put the quotation mark or the exclamation point inside the last quotation marks. A period always follows the last word in the sentence. So this is the following rules. These right here were the rules that apply to these examples if the person who is talking says something first and then there's nothing at the end of the sentence. The quote comes and then there's nothing else. Now we're going to talk about what happens if it's switched. The quote comes first and then somebody says something, okay? The person who's talking says something. So let's look at the examples. Start of our quotation mark, because this is the little bubble saying saying what was said by this person, okay? Say hello to Pauline. Since it's a command, it's telling you say hello to Pauline. It's a command, so we're not going to put a period, even though with commands and statements we usually do. With quotations, the rule is a little bit different. If the quotation is a command, we put a comma, end the quotation, then you finish it by saying Renee suggested, because this is what Renee suggested, okay? Since it's not in the beginning, we cannot put a period, okay? It comes at the end, so you put a comma and then you say, that's what Renee suggested, end it with a period, okay? Next one says, start of our quotation mark bubble, capital letter, of course. Pauline is a parrot. You see how she exclaimed it? I exclaimed. I exclaimed is a key, it's a clue telling you that there's supposed to be an exclamation mark. Since there's an exclamation mark, we put the exclamation mark, put the ending quotations, and continue our sentence with I exclaimed, period, okay? Even though this is supposed to be a period, since it's not at the end of the sentence, we put a comma, okay? End the sentence with a period. Here, this is what she exclaimed, so that has an exclamation mark. We don't put the exclamation point over here because that doesn't make sense. I am quoting what I said. Okay, if I'm telling a story, this is like somebody telling a story, and then and I saw a parrot, and Pauline is a parrot, I exclaimed. I'm not exclaiming it right now. I'm telling the person that that's what I exclaimed in the story. So I quote myself right here, and then I end it with a period, okay? Again, might be a little confusing, but let's get into more examples so it'll make more sense. Try it out, speak up. These sentences have quotations. How would you capitalize and punctuate each sentence? So let's find where we are going to add quotation marks and, put the punctuations and capital letters. Jay shouted, there must be 30 birds here. So what are we going to do? Well, it's saying that Jay shouted something. So this is not what Jay shouted. What did Jay shout? So the person is telling you in the beginning what's going to happen. So we put a comma right here after shouted. Start our quotation marks. First word in a quotation is capitalized, so we put our capital T right there. There must be 30 birds here. It was shouted, right? So what needs to happen at the end of this quotation? Put a period? No, put an exclamation point. Now what? Am I done? No, you're forgetting to end the quotation, okay? Right there. You put the end to your quotation. And now we're done. Number 2. Robin said, I guess they like our bird feeder. Now what do we have to do? So remember, same thing in number 1. Over here, it's telling us if somebody said something first, then that's what we need to do. So let's follow that example. Robin said, we put our comma, start our quotation bubble. The first word needs to be capitalized. It already is because I is always capitalized. So let's keep going. I guess they like our bird feeder. What do we put here? Was it a question? Did she exclaim it? Or did she just say it? Did she command it? Robin said. So that means we end it with a period, close our quotation bubble. Wonderful. Let's keep going. Next one. Polly added, they're eating all the sunflower seeds. So what would we do? Well, Polly added some information. So what is it that she added? We put a comma after added, start our quotation marks. What do we need to do with the first word? Make sure it's capitalized. They're eating all the sunflower seeds, which we put as a punctuation. Comma, period, exclamation point, question mark. We put just a period because it's just information that she added. Are we done? No, we have to remember to close our quotation. The quote ended right there, so we gotta put a close to it. Number 4. What kind of bird is that? I asked. So since I asked is at the end, that means that the quote is before this. This is telling you that I asked something. So what do we have to do? We start our sentence with the quotation bubble. First word in the quotation is always what? Capitalized. So make a capital W. What kind of bird is that? Since I asked a question, what do I have to do? This is right here is the question. So I put my question mark, then I close my quotation because I asked the question inside the quotation. This I asked is not a question. It wouldn't be, what kind of bird is that? I asked. No, that doesn't make sense. So that's exactly how it should be. And that's it. Next one. Look it up in our bird book, Robin said. So how would I do this one? How would I fix it? Well, Robin said is at the end, so we know that the beginning part is a quotation. So I already know I'm going to put my quotation. It already started with a capital letter this time. Where does the quotation end? Where does the quote end? Look it up in our bird book, Robin said. So it's right here before Robin said. So I'm going to end my quote there. But what punctuation do I put? Do I put a period? Because Robin just said it, right? So I should put a period. Wrong. Yes, Robin said it and it should be a period, but since the sentence does not end here because we have Robin said, we have to put a comma. So you see, that's the tricky part. Because we usually put a period, we think that that's where it's supposed to go, but the period goes here at the end. Periods end sentences, and that's it. Just like there's this little trend going around, people saying period, but that's because period literally means end of the sentence, end of the story. That's why people say that as an expression. So over here, we cannot put a period because the sentence is not done here. It's done over here. Even though we can put an exclamation mark or a question mark, that's an exception because if this is a question, we have to put it's a question mark. We have to put the question mark if it's a question. If this is an exclamation, we have to show that it's an exclamation by putting it there. So that's the only exception. Last one, number 6. Jay exclaimed, "Bird watching is a lot of fun." So how would we change this? How would we fix it? Well, Jay exclaimed is telling you that what the person said in the beginning. So that means our quote is afterwards. So what did Jay exclaim? Well, first we have to put our period here because our comma here because we're seeing what it is that Jay exclaimed. That's where our quote starts. What do we do after we start our quote? Make sure the first word is capitalized. It wasn't, so we're going to capitalize it. Bird watching is a lot of fun. So if he exclaimed it, what should be here at the end to end it? An exclamation point. And then we add our end quotations, and that's it. Alright guys, I hope this cleared it up for you a little bit. Just refer back to this page to the examples, what it is you have to do depending where the quote is in the sentence, okay? So you can always go back to the video to refer back to these examples, okay? Now let's see what your assignment is. Your assignment will be basically to do what I just did here in the example, okay? So you already know you're going to need your pen in OneNote. So let's head over and look. Alright, so this page is going to be in OneNote. What you're going to have to do is correct the sentences, okay? You're not going to have to write it again. You're just going to correct them. You're going to cross out letters that need to be capitalized, add commas, add periods, exclamation points, quotation marks, question marks, all of that, okay? So you're going to read the sentence and you're going to fix it where it needs to be fixed. So in the example it shows us, it says, Lindsay asked how many kinds of birds there are. So where is the quote? We see here that the person's saying that Lindsay asked in the beginning, so it means our quote is after that. So after Lindsay asked, we add our comma, start our quotation, start our quote right there. She asked her question, right? Because it says she asked. That's a clue as to what punctuation mark we're going to have. So how many kinds of birds are there? Put our question mark and our quotation, and we're done. Okay, so that's what you're going to do for these examples, for these problems, numbers 7 through 13. For numbers 14 through 22, you are going to do the same thing. There are 6 missing or incorrect punctuation marks and 3 missing capital letters. So together that is 9 things that need to be fixed. And you are going to find where those mistakes are and you're going to highlight them, okay? Or add them as well if it needs to be added. Okay, so that is your assignment. You're going to just do exactly as the example says. Brian asked, is it an owl? Look, how messed up is this? If Brian asked this, first of all, we have to add a comma after it says that he asked something. Second of all, when we start our quotation mark, what's the rule? First word must be capitalized. So you would highlight that. Then it's saying here that he asked it, but where's the question mark? It's outside of it. It's not Brian asked, is it an owl? and then like the question mark is at the end, outside of it. No, he asked it, so it must be inside the quote. He asked it. Nobody else did, not the person speaking. Brian did. So this question mark needs to be inside the quotation, just as they did right here when they fixed it. Okay, so you guys are going to do that for right here, numbers 14 through 22. There are altogether 9 mistakes, 6 missing or incorrect punctuation marks, and 3 missing capital letters. All right, so this is your assignment on your own, numbers 7 through 22. Go ahead and get started.